Welcome to this week's Treasury Career Corner podcast, where I interview Treasury professionals about their Treasury careers. Each and every week, I'll talk to treasurers about how they've built their careers, where they are now, where they see both themselves and the Treasury profession going to next. Let's get on with the show. This week's episode, I'm thrilled to be able to share with you that it's another Treasury Career Corner live event. This one we held, our first one, in Amsterdam in November 2025, with some amazing treasurers. We had Engin Dortepe, Director of Global Cash Management at Sabic Petrochemicals, and Ayça Arasoy-Kilic, the Treasurer and Global Head at Bunge. Two great guests, really fascinating Treasury career stories about how they achieved their career success, some of the challenges they've overcome, and the future of the Treasury profession. So enjoy today's episode and let's get on with the show.
So, thank you very much for all showing up. I know it's just because there's free beer later. That's what I've been told about the guys in the Netherlands. But thank you very much for coming along. So what we do is, first of all, we get you concentrating and we get loads of enthusiasm. So good evening, Amsterdam. You haven't let me down. Thank you very much. So we've got energy, we've got enthusiasm, but what we also want is your attention. So I do ask, if you've got phones, switch them off. Give yourselves this hour to yourselves, to your Treasury careers, and get to listen to three amazing treasurers. It's an investment in you, if you like. You've all come out here to, here we go, I've got a bit of the structure. Yes, it works. So, first intro. I'm Mike Richards, spoken to a lot of you over the past couple of weeks. I run the Treasury recruitment company. I put on these events because, as a recruiter of 27 plus years, I then started a podcast 7 years ago. That's grown and grown, 405, 408 episodes. Recently had the Global Treasurer of Amazon. We talked to global treasurers and you guys get the knowledge. That then became the live event. But the live event actually only happens, oh, there you go, there's us. This is who does it with me, Katie, my colleague Joe in the US, and Carly, who does all the hard work. But aside from that, we wouldn't be able to put this on without the support of our amazing hosts and sponsors. So can I have the guys from Baker McKenzie, please? Hands up. Big hands, come on. Those guys there, they've let us in the building. So please be careful and don't break anything, okay? Because they are lawyers and they will sue you. We have Chatham Financial. There you go. Sarah from Chatham. State Street Investment Management. Great. And TIS. Great. Now those guys, they've got the drinks tickets. So if you want a drink, you have to go and talk to them and also find out what they do, because they sponsor the events and let us do these things as well to give you this Treasury knowledge. But this is going to be the run through. I'm going to talk through with each of our guests, allow them to introduce themselves. They'll talk about their Treasury careers, how they've grown them, where they see their Treasury career, the Treasury profession going to next. And what we also do is then do question and answer. It's up to you guys to ask questions. When did you last get an opportunity in this kind of forum? I know we're going to get some answers downstairs in the bar, but joking aside, you actually get to ask these three amazing treasurers some of their views on Treasury and everything else. Then we'll also finish up with some key takeaways before going for refreshments. So, first of all, I'll let my first panelist, Engin, introduce himself. Over to you, sir.
Hi, thank you, Mike. My name is Engin Dortepe. I'm the Director for the Global Cash Management at Sabic, and also I'm the Managing Director for the Sabic Capital. So I'm living in the Netherlands nearly for 20 years, actually. I came here as a student, and as every, like the logical, reasonable 23-year-old, like the young man, it wasn't very difficult for me, to decide for a job, actually. It was in Amsterdam, the salary was good, and then I didn't know what I was going to do, actually. So I started my career as a derivatives trader at Garanti Bank International. I stayed in banking nearly for 11 years, and then when I left the bank, I was the head of the foreign exchange and derivatives desk. Then I made a significant shift in my career, actually. I joined Heineken. So I worked in Heineken for nearly in Treasury for 2.5 years, and then moved to business transformation, worked with data and technology guys and the business controller. And then one day, Mike gave me a call, and then I joined Sabic. I started my career there in corporate finance, and in the last 1.5 years, I'm leading the global cash management team.
Now, a lot of people know who Sabic are. Can you just, for the audience, explain exactly?
Well, how Mike described me, Sabic was, I have a company, it is one of the biggest companies that you never heard of. And then it was true, actually. So when I Googled it, it's the chemical arm of Saudi Aramco. So it is one of the biggest chemical companies in the world, operating nearly all around, actually. And then most assets in Saudi Arabia, but operating from US to China. And well, yeah, it has a very strong mandate from the Saudi government as well to diversify the economy from oil to more, the value-added products as well. And Sabic Capital is the financial arm of Sabic that does all the international financings throughout Amsterdam.
Cool. And what we're going to do is dip into the earlier stages of each of our panelists' careers in a moment, and then some of the choices they've made as well. And then, again, you can explore it when you do the questions. So, Aicha, over to you.
Hi.
Nice and loud. Go on.
Yeah, I'll go up.
Thank you.
So my name is Aicha. I started my career in banking, actually, in corporate banking, initially with Citibank and then with HSBC Bank. Then I left banking to move over to the corporate side. I left banking to join Shell in London, and I worked for Shell for just about a decade in a number of roles. My last treasury role at Shell was a deputy treasurer role for downstream business in London. And the role that made me move from UK to the Netherlands was my last role at Shell, which was the head of finance role, a regional finance lead role for exploration business in Africa. So I stepped out of treasury and went into business for quite a challenging part of the world, based here in the Netherlands. Yeah, then I left Shell and I joined Bunge in 2016, where I've been since. I did cover a number of roles, including Global Head of Capital Markets, and lastly, the EMEA and Asia Treasurer role, together with Head of Global Treasury Operations.
And who are Bunge, again, just for the...
Sure.
We should know them.
So Bunge is I think Shell doesn't need much telling, but
No.
Bunge is a global agricultural commodity trading and food company. It basically connects farmers with consumers, managing the whole supply chain for a number of agricultural commodities.
And it was more by luck than judgment when I invited my panelists that there's a lot of crossover in their backgrounds as well. So we can talk to that. But one of the other things was that you all had an early start in banking and you then made that shift into treasury. I wanted to go through, starting with yourself, Engin. What was the moment you decided a pivot into treasury? Or I know it's more, was it by plan that you thought treasury is the area for me? Or explain it to the audience, if you will, and then we'll go across the panel.
Well, I think, the banking back then in 2000s, early 2000s, it was the shiny times, actually. So it was, it was not, as a young graduate, it was not a difficult decision to go for banking. But then, and also it gives quite good impression, because we were creating solutions, hedging solutions for the big companies, actually, from airlines to conglomerates to production companies. So then again, it gives a very good sense of, you need to understand your customer and then create a solution for that. And then I was lucky enough to have my own P&L as well. So I was able to trade. So then again, it gives you the commercial mindset also and result orientation. But the banks has one habit, actually. If you are good, they keep you happy and then they keep you on the same spot. And then that was sort of the trap that I felt I fell into, actually, because I was doing the same thing for 11 years. I felt myself like a dentist, actually. There's nothing wrong being a dentist, but dentist does the same job, for 30 years. And then I didn't want to do that. And moving to Heineken, I think it was the same with Hellenic Bottling or Shell as well, it was really an eye-opener for me, actually. And then that helped me to diversify it.
And what was it like, did you know about Treasury? Or, we sometimes talk about how Treasury needs to sell itself a little bit more to the world, and you guys, that's why we do these events and things. What did you think?
Well, then again, there was a difference, actually. So I knew about coming from banking, knowing the banks, it helps a lot in terms of doing the business. But what Heineken teach me, actually, the first thing is that beer doesn't like to travel. So what it means is that you have to produce locally, you have to sell locally. It is the same case for Coca-Cola as well. And then if you operate in 70 countries, then at least there's a crisis in 5 of them. So you need to really be close to your customer and then internal customer and then understand what is happening there. This year it is Nigeria, next year it is Brazil, the year after it is somewhere else. So what is happening in this country, how these companies work actually. So that mindset shift, which I learned in Heineken as well. And another thing, like similar to Coca-Cola also, I learned marketing. So for Heineken, the outside of the bottle is as important as the inside of the bottle as well. People look in the cover, you buy it. If you like to taste, then you buy the second one. So going back in banking, it was extremely straightforward. You have a P&L. If you meet above your target, perfect. If you are below your target, well, too bad. But in Heineken or most of the corporates, it is more about, like how you present your work, how you sell your work, and then how is as much as important, like the storytelling is as much as important, the work itself actually.
Yeah. Aicha, what attracted you to Treasury, and Shell, it's a mega major, so did you know them well? Or?
It's a great question because I ended up in Treasury, but I think deep inside there were cues. So if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm Turkish. I'm originally from Istanbul. So I wanted to be a corporate banker. It kind of looked sexy when I was in school. We had some university instructors, teachers, professors who were double working, advising banks and so on, and all those examples brought to me made it look fun. So after an internship at one of the banks I mentioned earlier, they liked me and they asked me to start working part-time whilst I was still studying in school. And I did that in my last year at university in corporate banking. Then I graduated, they offered me a role, and then all these other big multinational corporate banks in Istanbul back then offered me jobs too. And I chose one. I started in one. And then back in the day in Turkey, we weren't really part of the global world of graduate talent. But they used to choose one or two people to send to London for their executive graduate development program for investment banking. So they chose me. I came to London, trained for 2 months, fully paid, excellent program with a lot of tutors, majors of their industries, and surrounded with people who studied from, coming from New York, Hong Kong, all over the place, gathered there for that training. And I loved it, and I felt like I needed that challenge and I needed to be in that environment. So I go back after 2 months and I tell them, can you please send me for an assignment in London? I want to work abroad. I want to try that. And they said, to the 22-year-old Aicha, no, we need you here. We're going to grow. We're going to go big. We need you here. It was disappointment. So, I did that. I enjoyed corporate banking. It's an excellent learning ground. You learn how to analyze your financial statements, do your rating models. If you are surrounded with good relationship managers, you learn how to build relations, which is a key skill, whether you're in Treasury or in another part of the corporate world. It was an excellent learning ground for me. But then that drive for, I want to go beyond this. I still need an assignment. Can I go? And then that didn't happen. And then I just solved my own problem. I applied. I got accepted for a role at Shell. And my first role at Shell wasn't actually in Treasury. So I bite the bullet. I took the risk. 23 years old back then. I just started there because there was no roles available in Treasury. I started in controlling function as an analyst. Yeah, but then, I moved to UK. I know no one in the UK. And I worked hard. It worked well. And I knew Treasury was close to my heart because of that few years of experience after school. And I just introduced myself to the Treasury teams. They liked me. And then I got hired into Treasury after my first assignment as a junior Treasury manager. And then I went up the ranks pretty quickly and did a number of roles. So that's how it evolved for me. And I truly enjoyed Treasury because if you're in a major global organizational setting, it allows you to intersect many different parts of the organization. And if you have the personality and the curiosity, you can be very close to the business.
Yeah.
And all those things appealed to me. But I also stepped out of it and then came back to it. In that sense, I specialize in Treasury, but I would say I probably am a rounded Treasury professional, rounded finance professional. I qualified as a chartered accountant whilst I was in the UK. It's kind of accountancy and Treasury can be counterintuitive to each other. We often have heated debates with controllers on whether it's the accounting treatment or the real money value that matters in a lot of discussions. But knowing what they do also helped me on this side. So in that sense, I try to do different things. But then, yeah, treasury has always been close to my heart in that sense. So I came back.
I'm going to come to you yourself. That transition to SABIC, and it's a global, and obviously there's different cultures as well. It's a real melting pot. You and I have talked about this before. What have you found the greatest challenge and also the greatest reward from that? What have you found?
Well, SABIC is, I mean, one of the biggest challenges, or, you know, like the differences actually. I mean, our, you know, like the lonely and beautiful country has been living on debt in the last 300 years. Saudi is totally the other side of that actually. So it is, you know, like extremely cash rich. So all the muscles are developed on investing cash, not raising cash actually, not raising money. It doesn't exist. The borrowing concept doesn't exist. Or liquidity management, I find myself, you know, like the privileged, lucky enough to be the director of a cash management of a company, and I'm sitting on 12 billion of cash actually. So, I mean, why do you need to manage your liquidity? You know, that is, but we had ambitious growth targets, and then those growth should happen, should only be or can only be available with leverage. Then again, but that requires significant mindset shift because the company has been set up, established by, and still being governed by engineers. So the finance or the corporate finance is not their concern actually. So I need to explain a lot of times what is debt, why do we need it, how do we raise it, you know, like the why bonds, why banks, why this bank, why Japanese, why not Americans, why, and then also why credit rating is important, why do we need to take care about our investors. Those things were extremely important actually, but also what is interesting in SABIC is that, you know, like it's a truly international company actually. We have, you know, people all around the world. And then it is transforming quite fast. And in the last 1.5 years ago, actually, we had a new group treasurer, and then that's where I have been appointed as the director. And we reshaped all the treasury. So it is, I mean, if you want to do something, then what is the reward actually? A lot of opportunities are there. And I'm not a person, I say yes easily actually. So, and then I don't shy away from, I don't know, but let me try to figure it out. So I said yes a lot of things, and then, well, then I figured out. And then it worked well. So crafting things and then the shaping things, I think, you know, like that was the reward in that, you know, like the growing environment.
Richard, with you and Bungie, food, agriculture, commodities, rapidly changing, volatile. What have you found most challenging or coping with in a, you know, it says a global treasury in that sector?
Yeah. It was a shift for me from Shell to Bungie. Similar to you, Shell liquidity is not a problem, highly rated. The challenge there is finding counterparties that are at least rated similar to you to place your cash with. Move to the other side, I felt like the true treasury work started. There was a crunch, you know, liquidity, there was stress, the company performance wasn't good for a period of time, and then there were other challenges, then there was a turnaround. But all in all, in trading business, you really work with highly smart, highly market-savvy individuals who are all, for example, gifted amateurs in FX. They all have their opinions on things which could generate results. And of course, you are there to protect and manage risk. So often you may clash, you may need to hold your course. And then who are you? You kind of look young, and where are you from? Where did you come from? Do you even know what we do, how the commodity markets work, and so on? So it hasn't been easy, I would say, initially. But once, if you show humility, want to learn, and show that you learn fast, and then you bring some ideas and actually, you know, we generate results, and then you earn your seat at the table. So then you become a credible partner, not just some roadblock between them and the markets. But yeah, it is difficult. I mean, you work a lot of with highly intellectual people who already have an opinion on, I mean, they trade commodity, so they want to trade other things as well. And then, you know, you just, there has to be some boundaries around that. But it all is up to how you present yourself, how confident you are in yourself. But it's also enjoyable. It's equally rewarding. You learn a lot. So I've enjoyed it.
We'll stay with you for a moment. You now coach and lead these very diverse global international teams, and a lot of these guys in the audience will have exposure in a similar way. how do you get the best of those out of those teams that might be working remotely or quite distant from you, and or any mistakes you've made along the way as well, and things that you wish you'd, obviously you never make mistakes, we know, not that we know.
Tell me about it.
I know, but any things that you can share with the audience, and then we'll come to you, Mary.
Sure. People are your only assets, I think. You may be trading this, buying this, manufacturing this and that, but your people, your teams are all you have. And you're only as good as the weakest link in the chain. And in global work environment, it's important to create a collaborative platform for your teams to work together and then to feel that they are all equal. And there's open communication. So I found that if you facilitate a platform where people can talk to each other from Southeast Asia to Middle East or to Europe, explain their issues, what they're dealing with, they're able to connect with each other. And then, everyone is smart and everyone is skilled in many ways. The light bulb's lit, you just facilitate it, that's all you do. But you need to encourage people to bring out the best. Some cultures don't want to speak up. They're brilliant, but they won't say a word. So you have to, at that point, it's not treasure skills, it's really basic human and personal skills that come into play. You need to pull out, encourage them, motivate them, and then let them speak and share and ask, and then the other one talks. And then this collaborative environment often helps achieve well. Then the other thing is you need to empower your people. You need to trust them and then let them go. I've made so many mistakes, I still do, but one mistake I made was I was very obsessed about doing well and doing the right thing, that I wouldn't let my people fail. That was a feedback that came to me a while ago. And it was spot on. I just, whenever I felt somebody was doing something wrong, I would step in or do it or, help them immediately, show them the right answer and put them on the right track. So in a controlled manner, I've learned throughout my career that you let people fail and learn, and then next time actually you don't need to be even around. Allowing people the space to do their own thing, to show themselves, to present themselves in front of the business is vital. You just recognize people by letting them show their work, by speaking up. So you create platforms where they just don't only talk to their internal treasury peers, but their other colleagues from across the organization. And you throw stretch assignments at people as well. If you feel somebody has the energy and they could do well, you put them in an assignment, in another part of the world, or you allow them to partner with someone else. That's the way to grow. And if you trust your people and you're fair, I find that, if you gain a lot of loyalty and get a good performance out of that.
Thank you.
I have not that much to add actually, I do agree with most of the comments here, but what I also have recognized that I worked previously both Heineken and in SABIC, two different big transformation projects as well. And then what I realized is that, for a transformation to be successful, then first you need to get a buy-in from the people. And then to convince people, I think, starting with, okay, why are we doing things actually? The moment that if people are not convinced why we do things, and then, why we are changing, then, forget about everything actually. You can have the best systems implemented or, the best strategy or, the best structure, but if people didn't buy it, then, 2 years later, another consultants came and then, they start a new transformation project. So I think it starts with the people on top of that, and then getting the buy-in and convincing the people on the why, I think what I can add on top of Ayça and Manya.
And we'll stay with you for a moment. Obviously, treasury professionals in this room there, trying to partner with businesses, you're trying to get out to the business. And how have you effectively done that, partnered with the business, and then also moved treasury? Because again, we've talked about this, moving from operational to strategic and being a business partner. There's lots of business, we're a partner to the business. And then people go, who are you? Who's treasury? How do you do that? And then we'll go across the panel.
Let me give you one simple example actually. Then again, coming from a company that cash and the financing was never an issue. So then again, who is treasury? So that was step one actually that I needed to pass. Then the second thing is that it is all about understanding the people and then what they need. And then most of the time, what they think as a problem is not really a problem actually, or what your problem is not their problem. So most of our affiliates, as cash manager, then again, what I wanted is that, okay, right cash needs to be at the right place. So I want to, like the dividend, upstream dividends as much as possible. We went to the affiliates and then say, yes, but they want to stick to a lot of cash buffers. But I mean, it is not that cash that they need actually, like they need a better forecast. If they have a better forecast, and then we created them a better forecast, how to do that, then the problem is solved. But on top of that, they said, yes, but our cash is going up and down, there are cyclicalities. Okay, fine. Then we created them revolving credit facilities from the local banks that they could, like to borrow. But then these are engineers. So utilizing a credit facility is for them a failure. So I need to convince them, guys, it is not bad to go borrow from a credit facility as long as you are not addicted to that. Then, with that, but that took 2 years, by the way, it wasn't easy.
How did you sell that to them? How did they buy it?
Well, at the end of the day, what has been managed is that, like they realized, and then their managements realized that the cash efficiency is one of the most important things, and then they should be able to operate with thin cash, and then that is the success, not sitting on a lot of cash actually. So what we are trying to do, like the moment that they are convinced it is something good for them as well, then it is achievable. But those convincing steps, like needs to be step by step. Or another example, let's say TMS is your problem, our problem, but a TMS is treasury management system is never a problem for a CEO. CEO wants to have higher profits, full stop. Then, then, because I made this battle recently actually, okay, you want higher profits, then, you need less interest expense, okay. For less interest expense, we need better visibility, better forecasting, better analytics. And then to get to that, I need this tool. So you want better, higher profits, then bring me in. The moment that I start crying, I want this because it's my problem, but the decision maker, the CEO hasn't, or the CFO doesn't have a problem. So understanding the problem is, I think, yeah.
So, nobody just gets given a seat or, gets to be accepted. I found that in some shape or form, you always end up having to earn your credibility. But that's doable, and it can be done in any environment. I think flexibility and adaptability really help. So that's quite key, I find, as a treasury professional as well. But partnering with the business requires you to understand the business. I think, first of all, I find that it's vital to understand what business your company is doing. Leave aside the treasury part. Who is doing what are we producing, why, where, how are we managing the risks around that? Going and seeing the plans, understanding the business, nothing to do with treasury is vital. At the end of the day, I'm going to represent a corporation in front of banks. I'd like to be able to tell the story. I need to be a good storyteller. So I need to learn the business well. And I find that journey of trying to learn the business often helps me get my way into the business as well, because they get to know about me and from my line of questioning or understanding. And then gradually you get invited, but you just earn it. Nobody just goes and gives it to you. And often settings are challenging. I was managing the finance function for exploration business in sub-Saharan Africa, responsible for countries like Nigeria, Gabon. And I remember those meetings in Nigeria where they wouldn't listen to a woman. So I'm not trying to generalize, but it wasn't in the culture that this foreigner came in and, but they were great at telling me and then, coming to me when I've just started to work with them. And it was quite counterintuitive to a treasurer before who was used to dealing with millions and where to put it and so on, to work with all these smart geoscientists who were basically promising a below 5% probability of finding oil and gas somewhere and, money and billions to spend meanwhile in that effort. That's just how that business is. It was quite counterintuitive. So how do you let your baggage go and then just keep an open mind and sit with them and understand and then put forward a proposal? You have to put forward a proposal asking for money and then, which is in the form of, goes to an investment committee for approval and you have to support it. So that requires a lot of partnership and understanding. But it's not just a matter of saying yes to everything. It's also saying no when it doesn't make sense to you, and having a bit of the courage and accepting the fact that you will not be very popular from time to time. I think that's quite key as well. Stopping things. It feels very painful in the moment, often. Very painful. But then in the mid-run, it corrects itself, and then that pain becomes some sort of a victory or common success. But yeah, I've been in situations where war broke somewhere, and then in the supply chain, they thought, okay, that country's in war now, we'll shift everything to that. I need that much of that currency, and we need to do it now. Can we buy this much? No, that currency, that country that just started the war, the currency collapsed. It costs now X% more to start buying that. And by the way, I know that there will be sanctions coming in. I will have a convertibility. I will have an issue very soon. I won't even be able to get the money out. So let's stop and, let's just take our time to decide. And then, well, X, Y, Z. No, you're stopping us. So, how do you go into those situations, keep your cool, make your points, but yet respect what they want to do, and then ensure an open environment where, maybe a wider audience comes in and judges the situation. So it felt really painful in the moment. You're not popular, but in the end, people understand.
Yeah.
So I think also at times like this, it's vital with the business that you're confident and you speak with the right market acumen, examples, and you effectuate what you say. And sooner or later it lands.
So again, you guys should listen to the podcast more. So one of the reasons being, when we did our session in New York earlier this year, had very good friend Summer Simmons, Victoria's Secret. She encountered just this very problem, and she was doing a lot of this. What she discovered is that a lot of the other teams, tax, for instance, didn't really understand Treasury. So she instigated Corporate Treasury 101. She went out to the business, ran these classes and these groups, and brought them in the room, taught them, and then they were doing this with accounts payable, they were doing this, just transformed a lot of this stuff. Now, we were sitting there, and you were thinking, there was Sandra from Bristol Myers Squibb, global multinational. You had Frank there from another global insurance group as well. And they just sat there and said, we're stealing that idea. They went, we're going to do that ourselves. And they literally have instigated those programs. That's one of the good things as well that you guys are describing as well. Now, I want to come back to another point. So we've got about 10 minutes left. We're going to do some Q&A in a minute. But before we do that, I want to ask another question to the panel. Then we do Q&A, and they've got some great takeaways for you guys. And also you will get to quiz them afterwards over refreshments. We'll say to yourself, first of all, Engin, and we'll go across the panel. We go to a lot of conferences. I've seen you at various ones, and we were just talking about it before, ladies. There are lots of sessions. Some of the headlines, anything, they could put AI in any other title, just to fill the room a little bit more, they would. And a few years ago it was blockchain and everything else. Which are not the sessions, but which are the things that are top of mind to you as Treasury that, top 2 or 3 maybe, or top 2 even, that you think treasurers in this room should be thinking about, and maybe the one they shouldn't really worry about for now? We'll come to you, Engin, then go across, and then we'll do questions.
I think, like the 2 things actually. One of the most important thing is going to be data and analytics actually. So how to leverage AI. Is AI going to replace us? I don't think so. But, like the thing is that if we don't leverage AI, then we would be replaced by another one. But then this is going to come, we need to compensate it with all the soft skills actually. Because then that is, what ChatGPT cannot do is, like the convincing, like the money or, like the you for a credit deal actually. So to what extent, like then investing in the social skills to understand the different cultures and then the real problem so that we can solve it by leveraging all the data and analytics actually. That is more or less what I'm thinking we would be going ahead.
Geopolitics and macroeconomy. I think as a treasurer, you need to understand where the world is headed, what are the key schemes, what's happening with trade in the world. And it just puts you in a different place when you're having conversations with the business so that you can smell what is going to happen and be ready for it. So it's really anything that would equip me and my teams with market acumen, understanding the possible scenarios, the macroeconomic factors shaping up world demand, supply, trade dynamics, that's quite vital. Because I should be able to smell something before it happens. Then I've added value to the organization. I mean, if you know a country is negotiating with IMF, X, Y, Z, and then you can say, there will be a depreciation. We just need to cover your position. And they said, no, it's so costly. It will eat up all our margin. This is the maths. This is your margin. This is how likely the devaluation is going to be. And then, so scenario is here. And so that way of thinking only comes with making sure you're very well connected to the world reality of commerce, trade, and politics. So I think that's number one. And I don't think any sort of technology would replace that. It's a lot of insights, it's acumen. AI, you throw a problem at AI, it will give you a solution, but it won't synthesize for you what your corporation does and how it ties in with what's happening and then what are the outcomes. You still need a human brain. You should still use it, absolutely, but just take it and then make it your own. And the second one is technology. Whether it's, like you said, blockchain, now it's AI, it could be something else. But I don't think it's to replace what we have, but rather to support. And three things: to automate, but really 3 S's as I see it: to simplify, standardize, streamline. So really getting your basics as automated as possible, your cash forecasting, your day-to-day cash management operations, your FX dealing if it's not a volatile business, but it's kind of standard. So all of that is enabled by algorithms or various technologies you can use. Make sure you basically deploy as much as possible and then leave time for your people to think and put into play intuition for markets. So I think it's those 2 things: geopolitics, macroeconomy, and technology.
Cool. And actually, on the back of that, some of the guests that I've spoken to recently, we were talking about the use of technology, and actually I did the session, and it was the session in Budapest actually, and someone was asking me, did I tend to use it in recruitment? I said no. I said I don't necessarily use it in recruitment. It gives me more time to do other things like these events and everything else. But also, one of the other points I've got from some of the people we've had on the podcast, some of the treasurers, and the best example is making a sandwich. And you put it in there, said, oh, make me a ham and cheese toastie on, with ChatGPT, and it will come out with an average. And it'll be a really poor average, really, because thousands of bits of data and backward data it's pulling in. But actually, if you say, make me a ham and cheese toast that Gordon Ramsay would make, without the swearing, but make me this perfect sandwich, make this, they're 2 different things, and there'll be different ingredients and different, but it's actually, as you say, the technology, the prompts, the things that you're putting in there, it's garbage in, garbage out, but actually if you put in the right things and the right questions. So questions, we're going to go to you guys in the audience. Oh, one here.
Yeah, this question is for you, because I could relate when you were saying about African countries. So how do you explain the sense of urgency? How did you explain the sense of urgency when you were talking to your African colleagues? Because you gave the example of Gabon. So, everything in Gabon takes place at its own pace. But for me, everything is so urgent. Like even the dividend declaration takes 3 months when you have to get approval from the regulator.
Yeah.
So getting that sense of urgency in your African colleagues, how difficult was it for you? Because for them, it's a way of life, right? I mean, the war is there, sanctions in there, regulation keeps on changing. But for me, to get that money out of Gabon as soon as possible is my highest priority.
Yeah. Excellent question. And I have an anecdote, actually. I was in Nigeria, and we were not allowed to travel extensively, but only be for security reasons, but in these specific places. And it's quite representative of the way of working. We ordered some pizza, and the pizza wouldn't come. And then, after a few asks, and anytime from now it will come. Anytime from now. That was the response we got. So, yeah, it's a bit cultural, but I think if you know that, you can try and work around that. Ironically, I find that things just work. I mean, the airports there, I'm taking examples outside the function, but I think they're quite transferable. I mean, everything happens last minute, but it works, and everyone is on the plane. All baggage is on the plane. You should see how manual it is, but it just works. I think people often discredit them for the fact that it looks lazy or late, but it works. So it's just not in maybe the culture to do it early enough, which is what we in Europe or in the Western world are consider more orderly. Well, which one is orderly? I don't know. In Europe, there's a delay, then nothing works. There, it's last minute, but it works. So I found that it was a bit of a shift in my mind to trust them with it, but also try to meet somewhere in the middle. You do more work for sure. You do more explaining. You do more reminding. Eventually you will get there, but accept and manage your stakeholders that this is going to be different. It will be on a different timeline, but it will get there. I find that it works. And they're so clever at coming up with solutions. What we could add in there is making sure they're sustainable solutions and not one-offs.
Yep. Other questions? Yes, please.
Thanks for the very interesting stories. You mentioned that as treasurers, you would suggest focusing on, learning the global trends and, of course, learning the technologies that are coming or have already come. And at the same time, I heard so many times the word like building bridges. But for building bridges, we all need soft skills. What do you think on this question?
Ooh.
Which soft skills would be the most helpful in the treasury work?
Start with you, Engin.
I think going back to your Gabon example, actually, I mean, it starts with listening and not making any assumptions or any judgments, because then again, there's a problem. You need the dividend assumptions or, like declarations are delayed by 3 months. When they are asking for a loan, are they also delayed by 3 months or are they more urgent? So then again, so if people, I mean, it is not that people are lazy, actually, it is the different thing. So then again, so when you want something from people, okay, then how it is beneficial for them, actually, what is in it for them? And then if they get this, then they are going to do it faster. So if they were totally lazy, then they wouldn't ask for a loan application in the 3 months, that place as well. So I think, like the listening is the most important part, in my opinion, without making judgments. And one of the most important things is that I think around the room it is the same case as well. We are so many different cultures, and then there are a lot of things are lost in translation, so that we need to be aware of that. I mean, when a British person says, well, that's very interesting, let me think about that, like I know how to interpret that versus a Dutch or a Turkish person says this also. But then again, the same thing can be understood or interpreted differently to Asian versus to a French people or to a Brazilian, actually. I mean, those differences in the cultural codes, which I always try to keep in my mind as well.
Aisha?
Yeah, I agree with Engin. I think awareness on cultural attributes is an important skill. It helps you uncover people, get the best out of people, and adjust your style, basically, to be able to work with them. Communication, I think, is vital. In Treasury, we are often seen as technical geeks doing their own thing in our corners. And if you let it be like that, then you'll be a lonely geek. But if you have the empathy to tell it in simple terms to others, I mean, we are all working with highly intelligent people. You earn respect, and in return you get something as well. You build your connections, you start building your village, people who will support you. And if you help people at tough times also, you'll find that it finds you back. So I think it's important to not be carried away by just your daily priorities. Be open to people and then be humble. And nothing specific to Treasury, actually. These attributes are needed for any professional. But in an area which is considered to be highly technical, I think they pay off even more.
So these guys, this is the last question. You've got in there quick, but we will also have time with the panel as well.
It was very inspiring. Now that I think I'm just going to combine it. So I'm a bit younger than you. I have less experience. So it was very inspiring for me to see that you can still stay passionate about Treasury. So I started my career as an FX trader. Then I moved to Treasury advisory. So it was like always doing projects, etc. I'm just curious, after spending so many years in Treasury, and what else would you do? Like, if you are to take an alternative path, what is still stands attractive for you?
So within Treasury, I think the first question I would ask myself is, have I done enough of everything? Is there other areas which I can tap into? It's just easier when you're within the same function. If nothing interests you or if that's not viable, then is this a function that's being led in such a way that it supports talent to grow, and so am I in the right place? That's a fair question to ask. And then what is the broader organization? Then what else can I possibly do? I mean, commercial finance, FP&A, tax, if you have passion for it, M&A, corporate development, finance aspects of corporate development are all some of the other kind of functions, areas which may exist in a lot of corporates, more so in global corporates perhaps. But how do I naturally connect via my work to those? If not, then just do a cold call to those and inquire and find out more and try to get in, maybe accepting the fact that it will be a parallel move. I mean, my move from deputy treasurer downstream into head of finance role for Exploration Africa was a parallel move. It took me a while to digest the fact that, I'm not being promoted here. I'm taking a sidestep, going into something else brand new. Am I doing the right thing? Why would I do that? Why? But, it was the best thing to do. It broadened me in ways that I couldn't have imagined. And it made me more of a commercial leader. You have to give in some, take some, but in the end, it pays off. And it requires a bit of faith and mid to long run vision. So in the short run, a lot of things will not make sense. It will feel that way. But I think you need to do the analysis, pros, cons. I used to build models to judge. What are the pluses? Whatever works for you as an individual, but you come up with your way of calculating and then convincing yourself which route makes sense. It will feel like taking a step back sometimes or taking a side step, but a few steps later, you'll see that it's actually a definite up.
Yeah. Just, let me compliment you. I totally agree with you, but I am a little bit more simplistic than your actual. So if I am bored, then I do something else. So then the question is that what is something else actually? And then when you are bored, it is a little bit more difficult to go up. So parallel move is a better thing actually. And three of us former companies said this sort of good thing actually, pushing people out of the comfort zone. So when I was in Treasury, then I became the finance business partner of the agile transformation. I worked with the IT guys, data technology. Okay, one part was Boston Consulting Group, McKinsey, which I had a familiarity with, but the IT guys, I had no clue. And then I learned, how they are thinking. I learned working with Post-its actually, And then, believe me, it was extremely challenging to explain the difference between CapEx and OpEx to an IT director. But then again, that experience was, in my opinion, the most valuable thing because I learned, how to explain things to the people who has no clue what I'm talking about actually. In bank or in treasury, we had this sort of a luxury that, everybody speaks the same language, same background, things are easy. So switching to these side things, I think, that helped me a lot actually. Yeah. And also at Heineken, for example, if you want to be a CFO, you need to be a controller. You need to check that box. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, I want to be a CFO. I decided, I also worked 1 year as a controller. And then I realized I don't want to spend my time doing a budget and then explaining rest of my time why it is deviating actually. So then, the moving back to treasury was, at least, I convinced myself, okay, my place is in treasury. But then again, trying something else is just convinced sometimes, that what we have valuable in our hand as well.
So they've got some great takeaways, and I'm going to also take some video from the back of the room. So if we would, and again, you don't have to go through all of them, but you can explain to the audience about your takeaways.
Then again, we are problem solvers. So we create value to our customers or to business as long as we solve the problem. Not we are the problem actually. And then diversification, going back to the same discussion, I think, it's the biggest asset that we can get in ourselves as well. And then back to our discussion, I think all these transformation people, without getting the people buying them, nothing happens actually. And all of them goes back to the influencing actually. We all of us good things in our mind, but if the message is not there, if we don't have these soft skills to influence to dividends get in 3 months time, then the money is not in the bank account actually.
Yeah, so look, I've referred to these points throughout the course of the discussion. What I find that a lot happens throughout your career. So what is vital is that you stick to your guts, and your moral compass is important, that you stay true to yourself. You'll find yourself in situations which challenge you personally. And I think holding your ground, allowing your values lead you, and not just the waves that come through your way, is important. And that will shine no matter where you are, whether you're in the treasury function or in another part of finance or in just the commercial environment. So I think that's important. I try to just stay true to myself, and I also would like every team member of mine to do the same. If it doesn't feel right to them, it probably isn't, and they should speak up. Generally, I think keeping an open mind and remaining flexible is a life skill. I was able to move from one country to another when the phases in my life allowed it, and I accepted assignments that had nothing to do with what I originally had in mind, but they just made a lot of sense. They had a few things that they would add to me. So that openness opened doors in many different ways for me. So I think not being rigid and being open pays off. Observe your environment. Something that I'm still not that good at, but networking smartly. So build your village. For those of you that have children, the saying goes, you need a village to raise a child. It's the same for careers. And it's not your immediate team or your immediate function. Actually, you need champions and sponsors outside your function, your team, that will speak about you. And when the time comes, that they will have an anecdote to tell about you, and it would make all the difference. So how do you do that? You start by observing. And then who are the critical people? Who are the people I can learn from? Who have things to offer? And how can I help them when the time comes? And going to the next one there in connection with this, never waste a good crisis. Those are the moments to shine. If you help someone, another senior leader that's not even in your organization or your immediate team, to cover up something that just happened or to help solve a problem they had, you'll find that they'll just say a few things about you in another setting that will pay you off in many different ways. So be a helper, be open, and never waste those moments, even if you may be stuck in another call which you deem is important. Step out of that call, go help that person solve it, and then go back to the call, which will take another probably 45 minutes of your time. So I think it's important to build your own village, and it needs to be done naturally, but make sure you have people outside your immediate organization that know you, that know your work. And the last thing I get asked a lot, work-life balance. And there's no such thing as balance, I find. You just find your own equilibrium somehow along the way. Some days feel like it's all about work, some days feel all about family, and a lot of days it feels like it's chaos. But you just hang in there and allow that it will not feel equal or balanced throughout, and you just somehow make it work. And that's okay. That's how everyone has it.
Mine, I'm just going to keep them shorter and sweeter, actually. So you can see those, and I can share them with you, networking with purpose. And that's the one I'm going to focus on, actually. The other bit, successfully learn from the others. You've seen 3 incredible treasurers here. You've got some great knowledge from them. Listen to the podcast, go to panels, go to conferences, listen to your peers, and you'll get the knowledge. Now, the reason I'm going to cut it short is because I also want to mention about this. So, Career Corner Challenge now, which I put to you guys. So, just last week, we did a Treasury Career Corner live in London. And before it, we actually ran some round tables. And the feedback was, Mike, we loved the live session and we loved the networking afterwards. But actually, the round tables where we got to spend one-to-one time with, as it was, 3 groups of 8 treasurers in a room, talking about technology, talking about this, said incredible networking, incredible to meet people. And they were also part of this and what I say to you is, when you go down for a drink now, it's lovely. Now, some of you might think, hey, I've got to get going, You've made this effort to come here. Make the effort to be there, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes. I did this challenge in Texas. This guy said, I'm quite introverted, Mike, I'm not quite sure. I said, look, I want you to go make 5 connections. Now, that is not 5 people you're just connecting to on LinkedIn. You need to go and talk to 5 people. Now, they all need to be Chatham. and need to be the guys at Baker McKenzie, and our sponsors, but at least one of those guys. So do go and speak to those guys. And there are the other sponsors. Where TAS? They got TAS. Thank you very much. You've got to speak to them. At least one of the sponsors. They can be one of your connections, but then at least 4 other treasury professionals. When you go there, who are they? What's the name? Who they work for? But then one thing about their company that they've got to tell you. So it can't just be, I work for these guys. So we just said about, be interested. So without further ado, the drinks are getting warm. Give this incredible panel a big round of applause. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's podcast just as much as I did recording it. But before you go, a couple of quick reminders. It's salary survey season. So head to treasurysalary.com, take part in this year's salary survey. 1,600 treasury professionals do it globally. If you haven't done it before, 2 minutes start to finish. If you have, thank you very much. Only takes you 30 seconds to update your salary, then you're part of this year's survey. We run it all year round, but we actually take snapshots in January and July. So the next one is coming up January 2026, end of then. And then to help you even more, we've got some partners that can help you. So we partnered with the AFP in the US. If you're studying for your CTP or FP&A, we make it cheaper for you. You get $150 off your study, and $150 off your preparation platforms. And every podcast episode you listen to also gets you CTP credits if you've already done your CTP course. Amazing. I know. You're welcome. Thanks. We've also partnered with a couple of others. So if you're wondering about how to map out your org structure or work out where all your money sits across your businesses, go to Fusible. These guys help you visualize it, plug and play. It's amazing. Then if you're struggling maybe with signatory lists, talked to a treasurer the other day and she said, actually, all these bank mandates, I've got to update them all, blah, blah. I said, hang on, here's my partners, Signatize. Real headache for lots of teams, but actually she's already using them. She said, it's just amazing. But then also you need some training. Who'd you go to? Gazing Performance Systems. Ian Cochran and the team there, fantastic. So if you're thinking, actually, 2026, you need to develop yourselves, get some more leadership training, Gazing Performance Systems and Ian and the team. Again, go to our partners page, treasuryrecruitment.com/partners, check it out and everything else. I'm looking forward to seeing you in 2026 at lots of our events. So you'll see more links and looking forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much for listening and see you. And thanks very much for listening and see you very soon.